Yo, Chill Crew, welcome back to the channel. I'm Mark Anthony, and I appreciate you being here. I hope you're having a great day. And if not, allow me to attempt to make it a little better by hitting you with a game review. Today, we're covering the game Tales of Kenzera Zao. In this video, we're discussing the creator, the story, the game level design briefly, fighting mechanics, the variation of bosses, and whether or not this is even the type of game for you. Are we a match or are we just chilling? You know what I'm saying? And then we'll hit you with the rating system to close this whole thing out. Now, let's get it in. The developer is Surgent Studios and the publisher is Electronic Arts, who needs no introduction, by the way, obviously. But the creator is Abubakar Salim, or Salem. Hopefully I'm saying that right. But most of you probably know him as Bayek in Assassin's Creed. That's the guy, yeah, that's him. Also, Abubakar is the founder of Surgent Studios, which, I mean, it makes sense, right? He's deeply ingrained in the organization and within this game, and we'll get into that more in the story. But just so you all know, just to recap, Tales of Kenzera Zao is the studio's first debut. Like, this is their first game. And I hope there's like plenty more games that comes from the studio, man. I'm telling you right now, what they've done so far with the Tales of Kenzera Zao, I hope there's a Tales of Kenzera something else, maybe. Who knows? Maybe this goes a little bit further, or they get into developing some other games. And I'm excited to see what they have coming up. But for now, let's hit up the story. The overall concept is pretty interesting. I mean, a story based on a grieving son reading a tale that was written by his late father, but leveraging African folklore as the foundation, primarily the Bantu cultures. And I'm not sure if many of you know this, but the Bantu culture spans several countries in Africa. I mean, we're talking about Nigeria, I believe Kenya, Togo, Guinea, Ghana, maybe Niger, Mali, South Africa. I mean, it's quite a bit. If you all look at the map and type in Bantu, it'll probably come up and you'll see all that good stuff. But it's a story that was inspired from Salem's loss of his father. So he brought this story deeply into, you know, the game and just how it relates to everybody else, right? As the story takes off, we're a shaman learning new tactics and abilities on the path to reclaiming his father's soul. I appreciate how the story relates so much to the main character and the creator. Emotional hurdles are something everyone can relate to when losing a loved one. I think that this being such a relatable story definitely helps the game out with its consumers, because everyone can relate to losing someone. This is something I've dealt with, maybe you have dealt with as well, but it definitely helps bring it all together for the consumer as well, with some nice graphics. I mean, it does help. It's better than a pop-up book story, I can tell you that much. It's just all this crazy interactivity and just plain visual appealing. Like, the graphics are nice, and we'll get into that as well in the game level design. But going back to the story, both are struggling to deal with the loss of their fathers, fighting, you know, against these different creatures, but also finding themselves coping in their own way along the way. Not to mention the weapons, but we'll get into that later in the video. For now, we're jumping into the game level design. Note, this metroidvania platforming style game keeps up with the best of them. When it comes to the genre of game, many things stand out: gameplay and level design. I mean, the visuals, as I mentioned before, are crazy good, and every level has its own personality. From tropical to savanna deserts, the Great Plains, and of course, what I'm calling the Kratos level. No. But seriously, this game is super dope. I mean, just this level alone is fiery. It just reminds me of the whole God of War scenario. Just really cool stuff there. But it's just like some of the recent games. One in particular I played not that long ago was Blasphemous 2. With great weapons and crazy mix-ups, this game kind of cemented, you know, just getting back into the platforming atmosphere. It had a couple of things in there that are somewhat similar to this particular game, from obviously, which is pretty standard in most Metroidvania platformers, the dash, You have multiple weapons you can use. But Blasphemous 2 took it a step further. They had a number of items that you can use, a number of weapons that you could choose from that change the overall play style, like the fight style as a whole. So I think this game, Blasphemous 2 took it to another level, but this one is Tales of Kenzera Zao is a more simpler approach to a platforming metroidvania type game. And it's not exactly a metroidvania type game. It is at its core and its base a side-scrolling 2.5D, sometimes isometric, over the head kind of game. But Trek to Yomi, which is a great reference for its visuals, its storytelling, and overall level design mechanics. Plus the little traps and environments and interactions. I mean, just being able to go through a level, take a specific path, and then drop a trap or set off a trap or approach an enemy a different way to help give you some leverage was really cool. Plus, it added to the replayability of that game. And then there's Never Yield. Because of its colors and visuals, I really was drawn to this game as a platforming type Metroidvania game. Plus, it's only by one developer. I mean, this guy put a lot of work into this game. But this, for me, added to just how I thought about platforming games and what I thought was special. Again, the colors, the visuals, reaction timing, reflexes, things of that nature. It really challenged me quite a bit. And I think Never Yield is something you all should check out as well. I might add it to the channel. But moving on, we have Oddworld Soulstrom. Now, Oddworld is deep in my heart. It's a franchise that I've played quite a bit. Oddworld Apes Odyssey and all the other Oddworlds out there, including this Soulstrom one. Great visuals, really cool puzzles, and kind of just thinking things through and how to solve for those specific puzzles across different levels. Now, all of these games help me understand Tales of Kenzera Zao a little bit better and just what were the strengths and weaknesses based on other kinds of games that exist that are kind of in the same genre. Whether you're thinking about a play experience, intriguing storyline, or simply enjoying colors and visuals, this game does have it all. I mean, we're talking about, each level having an atmosphere and a personality, but then also the simplicity in the fighting formats. The skill tree isn't too large, it's easy to digest, low learning curve, and you can kind of get through this with no problem. This leads us right into the game's fighting mechanics. At the game's core, there are two major fighting styles. One that's long range and another that's melee. But still, even with the melee, the aight, which gives you range options while in the melee style, does help. I mean, just imagine hitting somebody and they jump out of range, and then you just can throw an aight right at them to complete that last 1 point of damage before you die. Pretty cool stuff. Essentially, overall, it's a game with two combat styles, with multiple weapons and upgrades, but not overwhelming. Key point. The two kinds of stunning fighting styles that are each tied to the mythical mask, and according to the animation lead, they are both inspired by just one martial art originating from Nigeria. Kind of cool, right? A lot of martial arts, believe it or not, have originated in some part of Africa and is spread across the globe. If you look at the history, you'll kind of see all of that. But this particular one, they have a specific quote and statement that I'm going to read for you right now. Early on in development, we actually had 3 different masks. The animation lead, Griffin Warner, explains in a Twitter video, the mask that we ended up cutting, though, was the original melee powerhouse of the game. And its animation set was based on a martial art with Nigerian roots called Dembe. In Dembe, fighters compete with a cloth-wrapped hand called a spear, which they use to make rapid and precise attacks against opponents. It's got a fearlessness, the stances are quite wide and imposing, and they work really well in 2.5D, where we often show characters from a side or 3/4 profile. Now, for me, switching between the two stances was effortless and felt natural. I mean, I would jump up in the air, shoot, you know what I'm saying? And then switch to melee, boom, 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 knock him down, jump down, do some kind of aerial attack to the ground, and call it a day, right? It was pretty good stuff. But unlike other platformers, I wished I was able to utilize the Zawadi more. And I'll explain what the Zawadi is. But when you learn a new technique, I want to then take that into a boss battle or take that somewhere that makes sense. So sometimes I would learn something and wouldn't necessarily need it right away, or wouldn't be able to apply it right away. For me, I think the best parts of platformers are when you learn a technique and you get to apply it right away, or you get to bring it into a boss battle and it kind of cements it for you for the rest of the game. As I was mentioning, in the other games, it used to be like boss battles and places where you had the advantage. Now, I'm playing Bow, the Path of the Teal Lotus, and in that game we learned the grappling hook, or the grappling ability with the staff, and right after that we rode right into a boss where we were able to utilize the grappling hook. So it's pretty cool stuff. So I think that if we're able to bring that into more games, or this can adapt that into their next game, or even update this current game to have that happen, I doubt it will, but they need to keep that in mind for the next platformers or the types of Metroidvania-like games that they do. But moving on, other Hadithi are a bit more situational. The Tawa, which opens up new areas in the new levels and provides you with the platform transitions. For instance, I was able to transform into one of the fighting modes, depending on the color of the platform, and blast the platform open to expose a new area or give me leverage to jump to a new platform. So that was a cool addition, adding to the complexity of platforming in the game. The Kabili, I think that's how you say it, Kabili? The Kabili is basically a glide. It slows down descent and allows you to rise with the air currents where available. And in this game, it's not necessarily a tactic you would use too often, but it does buy you some time. Say for instance, if you miss a jump or you need access to a higher platform, but you need to shoot the boss off first or hit the creature before you fall, you can kind of glide to a new platform or give you some time just to basically react. And this is by far my favorite, the Shuguru. Y'all heard me, the Shuguru. I love saying that. Blasting through all the walls and creatures is definitely dope. Like for instance, I was able to use them on bosses, or use them on regular creatures throughout the levels that we had, and even open up new areas that were being blocked prior to us acquiring this ability. Pretty dope stuff. Now, spoiler alert, we're diving into the variety of bosses. This game doesn't have a wide variety of creatures or bosses, which is a good and bad thing. It's a good thing for new players getting into the Metroidvania type games. If you're entering into this genre, the lower the learning curve, the better off your experience may be, as there are tougher Metroidvania type platform games out there that will probably have you scratching your brain a little bit and getting very frustrated. But this isn't one of them. If you're new, this is a great game for you. But going over to the bad side, for experienced platformers that love a good challenge, this probably isn't the ideal game for you, but still it's a fun game that you can, use it to keep your fingers warm, right? Until the next complicated game surfaces. I mean, it is what it is, but you're not gonna get anything crazy out of here. I mean, it's essentially 8 creatures in total and a few variations of the characters. Some are projectiles or projectile based and heavy melee units. And one is just a freaking tank. I mean, seriously, the dude creates a shield, takes the shield up, charges at you on some juggernaut type stuff, and you just gotta get out the way and hit him from behind. Pause. Moving on. The major spirit boss, Impundulu, is the spirit of the sky. This has some challenging elements though. I will tell you that, there's a laser beam that you have to deal with, jumping and dodging, typical, 2D platformer kind of stuff. But essentially, you'll learn a lot about what this game has in store for you when it comes to fighting other bosses. You'll learn about, your timing, your jumping, your shooting, even your reflection. There's the move where you can reflect projectiles that are thrown at you, so I advise you to get really good at that. Then there's Kikiyaom. Kikiyaom? I think that's how you say it. Once the benevolent spirit of the nature is down in the deep, cold cave. Terrifying as you go through the level as a whole. It's really scary. It's fun though. It's fun and also daunting at the same time, but more fun than not. I'll tell you that right now. It's a really well designed level, beautiful graphics, and it's a bit non-traditional in boss fight because this one is about platforming, reflexes, and timing, right? You're gonna have to jump through most of the level, get down to an area, and then you start hitting these sacks, which then allow you to complete the boss battle. And I think it's pretty refreshing. I mean, you had the first battle of the boss in Pundaloo, where that was more your traditional shoot 'em, reflect, beam, dodge, jump out the way. And this one is purely platforming and then attacking, objects to complete the boss versus the actual boss themselves. And I think this aligns with the pacing pretty well. I mean, this is one of the things they got right in the game, is pacing you between bosses and then the types of fighting styles, I would say, you have to do against each boss. So it's pretty cool stuff. Now, we're moving on to the last major kind of spirit boss, which is Gagarib. I think it's Gagarib. Maybe that's how you say it. Someone correct me in the comments if you see this. But he's a behemoth of all bosses. This is the largest, most agile boss ever. It took a while to figure out what was going on regarding the wall slides, though. He has this particular move where he lifts up this wall and throws it at you. But it took me a while to get through it. I mean, hit 1, hit 2, hit 3. We died several times. But then we figured out we had to use the Shukadu. That was the one that really got us through this whole boss battle. Once we figured out how to use that, it was game over and we got through it. Now, the difference between the spirits is this one in nature is not a true, what I would call like spirit. It's one that represents the collective pain of all mankind. And we definitely felt the pain. We felt it hard. Pause. As for the end game, this is where it all comes together. Every boss you've ever fought comes down to this one particular fight. This is using all of the techniques you have, learning about each boss and remembering what their specific move sets were. It all culminates into one combined spirit. Now, earlier I said, spoiler alert, but I won't show the final boss and what it looks like. If you haven't already Googled and, because you want to enjoy the game until the end, make it happen. But it will be a challenge for sure. That much I can guarantee you. So just make sure as you're fighting the bosses, you pay attention to what their movesets are, because at the end of the day, you're gonna have to fight against every single one of them at once. Moving on, we now need to think about, are you the target? Is this game for you, right? We gotta dig into this. One of the major questions I have to ask is, are you an experienced platform or metroidvania player? You may not enjoy this game as much due to its lack of challenging aspects, right? I mean, there's 2 fighting styles, a very small skill tree, if you're used to the big skill trees that can add to the complexity of your fighting style and allow you to have more ways to fight enemies, or if you're used to having a large amount of enemies, this just might not be the game for you. And that's okay. I think that you can still enjoy it if you are a metroidvania player who's used to a more difficult game experience. You still can use this to kind of keep your hands fresh and learn something new with some fighting styles and even the storyline itself. Now, the next question I would ask is, are you new to metroidvania platforming games? Well, this may just be the game for you. There's some games that are a bit more challenging and difficult to wrap your head around, at least at the start, and may cause you some frustration. But this one lets you get your technique under you a little bit. You'll be, brushed with a few enemies and some fighting styles, but it should kind of work out for you in the end and not be too difficult or too frustrating to get to. Essentially, it's a low barrier to entry game with limited creatures and an easy fighting style mechanic. That much I will say. So, to recap, if you appreciate creative visuals and learning about different cultures and, want to further play a game but still be challenged, I say jump for it. The game is a nice change of pace when it comes to storytelling and culture. We haven't seen too many games from African culture or, Mayan and Aztec games. I wish there were more of them. But, if you're also curious about the story, this is a great opportunity to do that as well. So if you're looking for a smooth, fun ride with decent pacing, and I say decent because I wish there were more enemy encounters, but at least the level design made it more enjoyable. So yeah, you have the level design, which is a personality in itself, which kind of gets you through the pacing into the next set of enemies and bosses. And then you have a few enemies and bosses that kind of just, keep you active within the game. So what's the rating? At the end of the day, this is what you came for. This is what you want to get, right? It's aight. It's aight. That's the rating we're giving. It's aight. So it's not a bad game where you got to Netflix and chill it. I wouldn't say, leave this on the shelf and not play it. It's very fun. It's easy to pick up and get through, and the storyline is pretty cool. Plus, the culture is different, right? I mean, it's just something different to wrap your head around. And it's not the best game, so it's not the best platforming metroidvania type game in the world. I would not say that, but it is right in the middle. I think it's an alright game. I think the team, for their first debut, did a pretty good job of jumping into the metroidvania space and creating systems that are pretty familiar and something that we're used to playing. So if you like this review, let me know, what's up. And if you want to check out the game, there's a link that should be there for Epic Games specifically. I think there's a link that you can download it there. But you can also catch it on Steam and PlayStation, and I think most of the other platforms as well. So until then, Shield Crew, you know what to do. Stay cool. Peace.